Hey friends, Mike Myers here with the Songwriting for Guitar podcast, episode number 33, Judy Stakee. Now, before we dive into this week's episode, I am so excited to announce that I will be co-hosting an amazing workshop May 1st at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central with my good friends Bonnie Baker, Sarah Spencer, Ali Moss, Bess Rogers. Some of them have been on this podcast for our Trust the Process workshop, and we're going to be partnering with American Songwriter for this one. Now, we did our Trust the Process workshop at the beginning of this year. It was fantastic. So we decided to do another one. We're going to be focusing on brand new chapters, talking about things like how to craft a melody that moves, how to lean in to your individuality as a songwriter, how to quiet that damn inner critic that lives inside of you, how to care for your songwriting soul, expand your music vocabulary. So friends, if you are just focusing on technical things, technical, but you're not cultivating your songwriter soul, guess what? You're getting only one piece of the damn puzzle. You need the other half. So all you have to do is go to americansongwriter.com, click workshop, and reserve your ticket. This is something you don't want to miss. Remember, May 1st, 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central is when this workshop kicks off. Now, Judy is a legendary music publisher. She was senior creative VP at Warner Chappell. She worked with Sheryl Crow, Katy Perry, Michelle Branch, Joy Williams. But to me, she's also been a fantastic mentor, friend, song critiquer. I found out about Judy maybe a couple years ago and attended one of her songwriting retreats. And I was in just a weird spot creatively. I didn't feel that inspired. I was kind of going through a creative rut. I was not doing a lot of self-care either. But after taking Judy's retreat, it was transforming. There were so many people that I met there. Judy's view of what songwriting and the craft of songwriting should be made a gigantic impact on me that I knew, like, okay, that is the person that I need to keep on talking to and spend as much time as possible. And since then, we've done a few things together in terms of workshops. More importantly, she has helped me tremendously in just like my guidance in whether a song is like up to par or what needs work. She's always kept me in line, and she is so sweet, so wonderful. I could just go on and on about this intro of how much she has done for me and how much she means to me and my creative journey. But we're going to hear from her. We're going to hear about her story. So we are going to jump into it. Episode number 33, Judy Stakee. Oh my goodness, Judy. Thank you for doing this. Anytime I get a chance to spend time with you, talk to you, I feel better emotionally, just in general, creatively, because you're one of those people that I feel like you could talk to you. I could talk to you for 10 minutes and immediately for the next week, I feel empowered in those 10 minutes.
Thank you for that reflection. I appreciate it.
But I am
I'm glad to be here.
I'm so pumped to talk to you because you have a million interesting stories, I feel, because like, you know, all your time of people that you've worked with at Warner Chappell. But besides all of that, I want to get into what made you interested in pursuing a career in music from the beginning.
I had no choice. There was never any other decision. And it's interesting because I talk to a lot of songwriters and musicians and so forth and ask them that question too. And we have a lot of the same answer, is that I came out of the womb singing and dancing. That's what my mother said. I was just like, that was it. And I thought music was the most amazing thing that I'd ever encountered. I mean, it's out of thin air. You get these words and these melodies, and it makes you feel so amazing, you know, and comforts you. And I sang and danced my whole entire childhood. So for me, there was just no choice. I had no idea what I was going to do. Okay. I had no idea, because that was the other thing, is that like everybody else was like, well, I want to be a stewardess. It's like, okay, here's what you have to do. Here's the requirements. Or if I want to be a doctor, here's what you have to do. But to be, you know, to love music, like, what am I going to do? I didn't quite know. So I did want to sing and dance. I mean, that's what I set off to do, was to sing and dance.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the way, there was no internet back then. So it was much harder for me to go, how do you get to Broadway? And if you don't have parents that are, versed in this or have connections, you were kind of, at the mercy of your neighbors and what what your community knew. It was way different back then.
Yeah, that was interesting. The community you're surrounded with. Did you have examples of music? Anyone that was doing something with music, or was this purely just something you just kind of like?
No. I mean, I had one girl in high school who was going for voice lessons, and she was starting to like do things, and I was like, "Ooh, I want to watch her," and then she didn't do anything. So, no, not really. I mean, it was hometown. I was in a choral group, called the Hilltoppers, and it was out of choir. There were 16 of us, for 8 girls and 8 boys, alto, soprano, so forth, which was really fun. But I had no idea. You have to understand, I didn't know there was a music business. I mean, I didn't know that there was a place to go to,
Yeah.
And when I found out that there was, it was like, oh my God, it was like Disneyland to me. That's what it felt like. That there was like, you could go to A&M Records on La Brea, and it was a whole lot full of buildings. And this is where they made music. There was a studio, and there was publicity, and there was marketing, and all the creative people, and everybody was around. You would go into these companies, and they were just filled with employees that all they were there to do was to make the artist successful. I had no idea that was available. And I went to USC.
How do you get from that, from a small town choir, no one does music, to suddenly finding yourself on a lot where it's just like, shit, this is where music happens? How do you bridge that? How do you make that happen?
I'd like to say that I'm a really good listener, and I've been listening since the beginning. So I went to USC. You would think that somebody asked me recently, well, you went to USC, wouldn't they have all these connections and stuff? I said, now they do. Back then, I said, not at all. I said, I went to USC, and it was either, you were going to be an opera singer, or you were going to be in the symphony. And when I found that out, I was just like, because I got a music scholarship, I was very disappointed. I didn't know what to do, because that's not what I wanted to sing and dance. And I should have gone into acting, and then sang and danced on the side. But I graduated from USC, had no idea what I was going to do. I was getting my nails done. The woman who sat next to me was hearing me talk about how I just graduated, blah, blah, blah. And she said, hey, you know what? I am a manager at a sales company, and I'm always looking for somebody. Why don't you come in and interview with me? And I was like, all right. It's like I needed a job, and I didn't want to go do retail. And all my friends were like going to be salespeople for Procter and Gamble. And I was like, oh my God, slit my wrists. So I went in and interviewed, and she said, this is all you have to do, Monday through Friday. I said, great. And I got sales training. I mean, I got real sales training. And it was an executive recruiting company. So you took guys from Coca-Cola, and then you placed them at 7-Up if there was a position open. It was a temp agency basically for executives, but I learned a lot. And I was there for 3 months, and there was only 2 women, me and my boss. Everybody else was men. So when this woman from New York moved out here, and she was working for the New York company, and she moved out to LA, and she walked in the office, well, she was a woman, so of course she was going to stand out. But she stood out because she had jet black hair. She had heels on that were, 6 inches. She was very short, so 6 inches. She had ruby red lips. I mean, she was really pretty, but she was noticeable. And we became friends. And I said, why did you move out here? She goes, I came to get in the music industry. I was like, what? Wait, hold on. What did you just say? She was like, I want to be in the music business, the music industry. I want to work in it. I'm like, work where? What do you do? What are you talking about? And I just followed her. I mean, we both quit the job after a month, and she got a job at Barry Rothman, the law offices of Barry Rothman. And he was an entertainment lawyer, and he represented Dave Mason, who was big at the time, The Emotions, which was a 3-girl singing group, sisters, Ron Wood of the Rolling Stones. We had offices on Sunset Boulevard. And I mean, she had all offices on Sunset Boulevard. And so she went to work. She was his assistant. She was like the office manager assistant. It was a very small office. She lasted a week. She was no more assistant than she was never an assistant. She didn't know what to do. And he was a pain in the ass. But we didn't quite know what a pain in the ass he was. But she called me and said, "Why don't you take this job? I got a job across the street at a publishing company." I said, "Okay, I'll come take the job." Well, I lasted for 9 months with Barry, learning everything I could about the entertainment industry. I learned what BMI and ASCAP, because there was no classes at USC like there are now. Now everybody knows about everything. Then I had no idea what those things were. So I worked in the law office. There were a couple of lawyers there that one to this day is Eric Greenspan, is still one of my dearest friends. Did a lot of business with him, but we helped each other through the chaos of the boss that we worked with. Linda goes over and works for a publishing company across the street called Dunhill Publishing. It's part of Dunhill Records. And I'm like, "What do you do?" And she's like, I plug songs." And I'm like, "Oh, I want to do what you do." So she left Dunhill and went to Arista Music Publishing. And she was there for maybe a month or so. And the president, it's a five-person company. The president needed a secretary. So Linda said, "I've got somebody for you," called me. I came over, got that job, and worked as a secretary for Billy Michelle at Arista Music under the Clive Davis umbrella back then, when it was a very, very small company. And was there for 7 years, working my way up. Yeah. I mean, sitting next to the manicurist, taking that job and meeting Linda Blum. She's a very big part of my story, because she got me my 2 jobs that got me into the music business.
Do you feel like, from that story you said at the very beginning that you were good at listening? Do you feel like sometimes we're inundated, especially now, with so much social media and things, it's so noisy that we're not taking time to listen, that we miss moments like that? Like, we miss a Linda, we miss a person that is literally right in front of us, because we're oversaturated with so much, and we're talking, we're not listening for the doors that are ready to open up for us.
We're so busy worrying about the future that we're not living in the present. We're so worried about the things that we did in the past that we're missing what we're doing today, which is basically what you're saying, is that we move at a very fast pace. There are signs all around us. Our thoughts and ideas produce our reality. Our stories produce our reality. And the way people talk, the way you tell your story is how you live your life. And so if you're not listening to yourself in how you talk, you're going to be missing other things. It's very interesting. I had a conversation with a friend this weekend who is going through a lot of things at work. And she said, "Well, I've got to find my confidence. I don't have confidence. I don't have confidence." And I said, "Hold on here." I said, "Do you go to the market and pick up groceries?" And I said, "Drive a car home?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you have to be pretty confident to go into the store alone and know what you're going to buy and drive a car home." And, I said, "You're very confident when it comes to picking up your husband's cleaners and making sure that all this stuff is done. And you have this job and I said, "Your confidence may, it may be a little less right now. We maybe have to pump your confidence up, but you have confidence. Let's change that story. Let's switch it." So instead of like, "I don't have any confidence, I'm no good, I'm not," it's like, okay, I know you're feeling like that in this moment, but let's think about that, because that language is not going to get you out of your situation.
I feel that's one of your gifts, because I remember doing your retreat, and I remember when we would say something, you'd be like, "Oh, that's interesting. What you said right there, pause. Could you tell me more about that?" And it's like the thing that we're so quick to breeze over and be like, that's not important. That's not, and suddenly you go, actually, that's really interesting. Again, that's your key of just listening. And did that, because, to be a secretary, you were there, and eventually working your way to Warner Chappell, and eventually, picking songs. Do you feel like that listening ear just got better and better and better? It was like the strength that you had, you leaned into it, and you were like, "I can fucking kick ass at this."
It's the combination of 10,000 hours. You have to, after a while, the practice makes perfect. And at the very beginning, I had really good mentors around me. My first boss, Billy Michelle, rest in peace, may he, taught me how to listen to songs. So he would bring, there was Billy and me, there was a head of copyright and her secretary, and Linda, who was the creative person. That was it. There was 5 of us. So when, Billy was listening to songs, he would say, Judy, come in, Linda, come in, Tom, and we'd all go in and we would listen to these songs. And he would say, oh, I don't like this. And I'd be like, well, why not? So he would say, this is why it doesn't work for me. The chorus doesn't come in till 2 minutes and the chorus should come in at 45 seconds, things like that you all of a sudden learned these little tricks and tips. And I went into classes, as soon as I was in the music business, there were some songwriters at the time teaching continuing education classes. That's what you did these at that time, So I remember going to Santa Monica College and taking a class from this writer who I know, Gloria Skleroff. This is, 35 years ago. And she was getting up and she was teaching songwriting to this class. And I was like, okay, let me hear what you got to say, So I was listening to everybody and then picking what I needed out of there to form my own language. That's where I think I excel at, and where what I've really helped songwriters in is that I've created a language so that when we are speaking and your song is not up to par and I want to critique it and I want to communicate with you, why not? There is a language that I have developed so that it's easily understandable. The example I give is that if you wanted to be a cook, then we would talk in, I need 4 ounces of that. I need 4 pounds of apples. I need a teaspoon of sugar. I need, a pot. I need a pan. I need oven, all of that. That would be a language. If you were, going to make shoes, then it would be like, okay, I need a cobblestone. I need leather. There's language. That was a terrible one because I don't know the language of that, but there's a language that each passion has. Okay. Well, in songwriting, what I found is that, a lot of people would say, these songwriters, well, I'm not crazy about your song. I don't think it's a hit. Go change it. The hook isn't good enough. And it would be these broad statements, and you'd be, like songwriters, like the A&R people, somebody would tell them that, and they'd be like, what does that mean? The hook isn't good enough. And it's like, I don't like the dress. Well, what don't you like about it? I don't know. I just don't like the dress. It's like, well, is it the hem? Is it the color? Is it the cut? Is it the fit? Is it the, it's all those things. So it was creating a language so that they could hear me. You could hear me. The songwriters could hear me, so that they could get better. I mean, that's why I'm there. I'm the coach. I'm there to get you to the Olympics. That's my job. My job is to teach you, to educate you, to inspire you so that you can write great songs so you can have a great living.
I love how you said your language, because you took all the information, as you said, all those different avenues that you were immersing yourself in with music and being like, ooh, yes. Yes. And it's like those different combinations you're comprising together to create, okay, this is Judy when she comes and she gives her, explanation to the songwriter. She's going to take all these different avenues, but in a way that the songwriter can understand. And do you feel like, I guess, you saw examples of, okay, you're doing the thing, but you're not communicating it effectively. Like you told them it's not a hit, but like, how can you help them make the hit? What can they change to make that more viable, to make that like hit the mark, as opposed to a blanket statement, it's not working for me?
Well, and that's where my language comes in, because I look at the song and for me, the song is the voice, the melody, and the lyric. So if the song isn't working, you first look, is it the voice? Okay. Do we like the demo singer? Do we like you singing it? Should you hire a demo? It's all of that. Do we like the actual voice that's going to carry this? The lyric, is it a good story? That's where I find the most work is lyrically, because I find that songwriters are not taught and are not aware that they are telling a story. Lyrics sometimes are just, there's a lot of poetry in them. And a lot of poets come to writing lyrics. The thing is, in poetry, you can have 4 words, or you could have 400 words. In a lyric, you have 200 to 300 words, and it's once upon a time. You're telling a little slice of life. It's not an overall thing. It's, you're telling a story. And I feel that's where songwriters have their most work to do. And then you look at the melody and you say, okay, is your melody melodic? Is it singable? Is it repeatable? Is it moving me? Is it angry enough? Is it happy enough? So the emotions that go into a melody, we look at that. So I start with the voice, the music, the lyrics, and the melody. And I start by looking at a song like that and breaking it down. And then within the lyrics, like, let's just say, okay, you know what? The melody is amazing. Oh my God, it's perfect. It's perfect. And I love your singing, but the story is just not there. So let's break it down. And then what motivated you? I ask them, what motivated you to inspire this story? So, and that's when I find that when somebody is not looking at the lyrics and just telling me, okay, this is what it's about. This is what motivated me. The day that, I picked up, my old boyfriend at the airport, and then the story starts unraveling. And usually that's where I find the missing piece, because they tell it to me. They say it in their description, and I'm sitting there listening to them.
Yeah. Do you feel people try to get too clever sometimes?
I was exactly right. We said it at the same time. I love it, Jinx.
But it is. It's almost like sometimes people are trying too hard, as opposed to just being like, this is what it is. It's like if I went up to my girlfriend, I was like, through all the stars and everything. And meanwhile, she just would be like, I just asked you, do you love, you can just say, yes, I love you, as opposed to this 12 sentence, that rambling almost.
Rambling. And the other things that songwriters tend to do, I'm going to lump in a generalization here, is the generalization. He done me wrong, and then he came back, and we made up, and we're okay now. It's just, there's a generalness to it. And what I find is that the way I teach is that think of it as a one scene in a movie. Mm-hmm. Think of it, you're giving me one scene in a movie. And the example I give a lot of times is that, if you're at the door and you're ready to knock, and you're about to go and, confront your partner about, the fight you had last night. Well, if you're about to knock, the camera goes, okay, scene. And you're like, oh, I'm about to, oh God, I don't know if I'm ready to knock yet. It's like, he was so mad, and I don't know if I'm ready to like apologize yet. Okay. But once I knock on the door, that's a whole other scene. That's a whole other song. I've knocked, I hear him coming. Oh my gosh, am I ready? So it's when we, I sat on the porch for a long time, and then I knocked, and then I came in, and it's like, no, that's way too much of the story. That's a movie. A song is a snippet. A song is one little scene.
It's almost like people are trying to write the opening credits and the closing credits. And meanwhile, it's just like there was so much that happened in between. You didn't pick. You just kind of made that quick general like movie, and it's done. We made up and we lived happily ever after. That's boring.
Yeah. Boring. Yeah.
Now, when you made the move to Warner Chappell, how did that happen?
Wow, the universe was right there for me. I worked at Arista for 7 years, and the thing about the industry back then, and I'm sure that there's still to this point, is that once a secretary in your boss's eyes, always a secretary in your boss's eyes. So I graduated, and I was a song plugger, and I was general professional manager, and I had my own assistant by this time, and the whole thing. But Billy still looked at me as his assistant, and there was just the ceiling got very low there at Arista. So I went over to Screen Gems, which was a division of the Capitol EMI system, record system. And I was there for 3 years, and it was a great move, because at Arista, it was very corporate. There was no studios. We were in a high-rise building. Clive was in New York, so it was just we didn't have a lot of staff songwriters, so we relied on catalog. But when I got to Screen Gems, there were staff songwriters. And I was in charge of Carole King, Jerry Goff, and Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil from the Brill Building days. So I had a plethora of songwriters. We had studios. We had a studio upstairs for us, and EMI Records had a studio downstairs. So like the Red Hot Chili Peppers would be downstairs. Scott Cutler would be upstairs. It was writers and artists just through this building. It was a hangout. It was it was really fun. And I got so much more, I was exposed much more to the creative process. I was in the room with the writers when they were writing. I could actually see what was going on instead of, I feel like I went to college with Arista and then I got to like experience life with Screen Gems. Well, what happened in 1988 is that we had, the world went crazy with mergers and acquisitions. And Time and Warner had merged. And then Warner went out and bought Chappell Music and they merged. So you had these two huge catalogs merging and now they were 1 million songs and they got rid of all the Chappell people. Okay.
Yeah.
So Warner's took over this big conglomerate. All the Chappell people are, not all of them, but the president, Linda Blum is out of a job now. Okay. All those people. Screen Gems, we were without a president. It just so happened. So they hired the president of Chappell, who then brought Linda Blum, all of their people, his people, over to Screen Gems and forced me out. So it's so funny that, here Linda Blum gets me my first 2 jobs and now she comes and takes over my job. So forces me out and I'm without a job for 9 months. My first interview after I left, Warner Chappell called and I went over. My friend Sherry Saba called and said, get over here. We're going to need somebody. And I went over and interviewed with Mike Sandoval and we sat in this room with boxes and people moving. I mean, they were moving offices. They had just merged. It was a bedlam. And he's like, I'd love to hire you, but we don't know what's going on here yet. I was like, okay. So I went home and I started interviewing. I went to Nashville, interviewed with Tree Publishing down there and thought maybe I'd make the move down there. And I interviewed with Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil, who were starting a smaller company. And I thought that would be fun, working out of a house instead of a company. And then Warner Chappell called and said, we want you. And I went, I'm there. So it was a waiting game. It was 9 months of like, oh my God, am I going to make it? If I'm going to make rent, but thank God for savings.
How did you handle those 9 months? Because I feel for some people, they're always in their music career in that sometimes perpetual state of waiting. And when things aren't clear, doors haven't opened yet. And there's just this period where, something's gonna happen, but you can't name that something, the place, the people. How did you cope with that sort of a lot of unknowns?
I had a really great support system. I mean, by that time, I also had established a good reputation for myself in the music business. Okay. So I'd gotten cuts. I had great songwriters, I knew all the A&R people. So when I stopped, to the point you were talking, it's like, I sat there, there was a couple of weeks. I'm like, I'm never getting a job again. Am I going to have to go teach school? What am I going to do? How am I going to, it was hard, but I kept myself busy. I actually developed a dill mustard that I almost got off the ground, and spent a lot of time like developing a recipe. And I had the bottles, I had the labels, I held the whole bit. And then Warner Chappell called and I left it. But the other thing that happened that was really great is that I had made friends with a gentleman by the name of Bob Pfeiffer, who had moved out from New York right when I was leaving at the end of Screen Gems. And we became friends and he worked at Epic Records. And his boss, Dave Novak, had just come from, I think, Australia or London to run the office. And Bob called and said, I know you're looking and stuff, but we've got an extra office here. Why don't you come in and work out of the office a couple days a week? And you can listen to all the unsolicited tapes that we get in. And, you can do stuff for us around here. I said, done. And so I would go in there and like they had Billboard magazine that I could read, because I wasn't going to, pay for that right now. So, they had all the resources and all the gossip, all that, like all the people that came in, like I was hanging out with them. So I was still in it. I still had my face was still being seen. So those are really the things how I coped with it the most. And I had, like I said, I had savings.
Do you have a jar still of your dill pickle, or the label? Do you still have the label somewhere?
I have it somewhere along I'll have to find it. I know it's in a file someplace. Yeah. It's really good mustard, actually.
Oh, but that's just interesting to me. That is just like you entertain some things, but I think it's also encouraging that you found whatever you could do to still have a fast in music, still stay connected, even in the unknowns, whatever it looked like, that you said
Yeah.
yes, and you were there and you were doing the thing that you do well, which was you were listening, you were just taking it in and just, what can I do even in this period of unknown and just kind of like waiting for stuff to happen, which is huge. And then you get the call to Warner Chappell. You're
Yeah.
there, and the slew of people that you ended up mentoring with, songwriters.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very, very
Ju-
fortunate. Very fortunate. I mean, that was like going to the Rolls Royce of publishing then, because there was nobody else came close. For 5 or 6 years, we won Publisher of the Year at ASCAP and BMI because we had a million songs. Everybody else was like, in the Screen Gems had 100,000. So nobody came close to the reach, that we had.
That's amazing. Now, I gotta ask, how did you discover? Because you discovered people like Sheryl Crow. You've worked with people like Katy Perry, King and Country. What were some of those experiences like? When can you tell? Like, even if there are things that need worked on, like it's almost like you can see that pearl, even and you're just like, oh, that is a gem right there. That is amazing.
I don't know. I would have to actually go back and really look at my roster. There weren't too many people that I needed a second
Yeah.
date with. It's interesting because I've been writing about this, and I mean, everyone from, with Sheryl, I hadn't even heard her music, and I met her at lunch and was so
Yeah.
taken with her and just the way she spoke and her communication skills. And then she sang for me, and I was like, oh my God, I love you. For King and Country, they had to work. I didn't sign them right away. I liked them right away, but they didn't have their songs. They were really early on. So I worked for King and Country for 9 months before I signed them. But every time, what happened with King and Country is that when I met them, it was like, okay, you guys are great, but you need work. Here's some homework. Here's some things I want you to do. Pay attention to on the songs. And then when I'm back here next time, we'll meet. And every time I would meet, they had developed even more and even more and even more. They were listening to what I had to say. That was it. They were listening to what I had to say. They were applying it. And I must say, I had a partner on this, Sean Schenkel, who's a wonderful producer, writer. He's based in Nashville, and we did The Boys together. And then they came in with a song one day, and it was like, all right, done. Let's get paper. You got it. I can see you as a group. I see, you're done.
Yeah.
So it's seeing that little thing. And then, there have been writers that I have said, okay, here's some homework, and they just didn't do it. So it's like, okay, bye, but that was the thing. Sheryl was an A+ student. She did all her homework. I said, I'm not crazy about this. Go change this or go do this, or, and she went, okay, got it. I've done that. What else do you need me to do?
With all those people that you've seen that have taken the work and run with it and done it, are there certain characteristics when you can tell someone is just like taking the information and you're like, I won't see them again? Like they're just gonna.
Oh yeah.
Why do you think that happens? Yeah. Is it ego? Is it sometimes they think they're just in the right constantly? Or what's the stubbornness that just kills some songwriters from just growing and knowing that you're not holding them back? You're just saying, hey, these are the things I've noticed. This is what you need to work on. It seems like you're giving them the answer to this. Do it.
Right. But the answer I'm giving them is not the one they were looking for. What they were looking for was validation that they are good, that they are great, and then I could get them into doors, into call up somebody and get a song placed or something. And it's like there's a lot of work to be done before you get to that place. And most writers, majority of writers want to put the work in. The ones that don't want to put the work in usually are not the ones that make it. That is true with anything. It's true with anything, from being a mother to being a doctor to being, whatever. It's like, if you don't put the work in, the result is going to be, But there's a lot. Yeah, I see a lot of clients who come to me for a consultation, and I see them once and I never hear them again, because it's like, Okay, this is what you're going to need to do. And the other thing is that a lot of people love to hear themselves talk. They just, it's been very interesting. I've had a few not clients, but a few consultations, one-offs that will come in, and I will try and tell them something, and they will, yeah, but let me tell you why I wrote it. And it was, and it's like, I don't need you to defend it. We need to change. We need to critique it. And it's like, well, no, because I don't want to change it, because this is what it's about. And this is what it's like. Okay, if that's how you want, if you don't want to change it, if you don't want to develop yourself, then there's nothing I can do. So you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So, it's the willingness to develop. And Mike, the other thing is that, we get out of college, this mentality of you go to school, you get out of college at 21, and then you go to work and you're done. Well, if you're 21 and you're still in the same job for 30 years and have not learned anything new, you're going to be in the same place. So my philosophy is that, every day is a winding road. Every day is another day to develop. Another day is to learn something new, because every time I learn something new, it makes what I've got even richer. Every time I learn something new, I can go more places because I've got this knowledge now. I can do this because now I know this. It all goes hand in hand. And I think it's fascinating. I think that developing ourselves is one of the most fascinating things we can do.
It is, because what you just said is one of the many reasons why I love you, because it was like, it's a never ending, the craft, the journey. Never. It's not one where you reach the mountaintop.
It's not about the destination. It's about the journey. And we all think it's about, getting the prize. And it's like, once you have the prize, you got to do it again.
So it's more or less, if you
right?
if you don't enjoy the process, there's no point. Then you're going to hate everything, because the whole thing is a process.
You got it. And that's the key. The key is, are you enjoying the process? Or do you like what you're doing? Are you passionate about this whole thing? It's like, if you're not, then go find something else that you're passionate about. And I think also it's the go try. Go try this. And if you don't like, go try, go find something. Yeah. Go find what you're passionate about. And only you know that.
So you had your time at Warner Chappell, and I love this. You pivoted and you started to create your own thing. It's like, for all this time, you were creating your own language too, and the way to communicate, and you were listening, that it makes sense that eventually having your own brand and your own company. When did you realize, some people realize that, oh, this door's closing, it's time to close it. Sometimes people close a lot of doors when it's just like they can't stand it anymore and they have to get on to the other side. Right. When did you realize, this is the time to make the switch? I've been doing this, it's time for the next thing.
It became very apparent, the music business, as the whole world changed in 2004, 2005. I call it the perfect storm financially in our society, where 9/11 finally caught up with us, and now we were, there was 2 wars that we were paying for, and the recession was on. Mm-hmm. The cost of going from analog to digital was so expensive, and what I'm talking about is every single piece of paper had to be put into a computer, or no one gets paid. Let's just say, and that took a lot of money, a lot of money. So the music business changed drastically. And one of the things that they didn't want to pay for anymore was the development process. The development process takes time. It doesn't take as much time if the person that's developing knows what they're doing. But if not, you could have a writer signed to a company for 3 or 4 years, and not have a cut and not be anywhere, and be out $150,000. Well, those deals were not, all of a sudden, everyone started looking at the books and going, what are you talking about? You pay a writer for 4 years and you have nothing on them? For me, my average was 1 to 2 years, and, they'd be off and running. So, but it's in the development process. All right. It's all those hours spent with Sheryl Crow. She was a great writer. Don't get me wrong. She's a great writer to begin with, but it was all just the little editing and stuff like that set her foundation, so that she built a tall, great company. So what happened was that it's a longer story, but in those from 2005 to 2009, Warner Chappell went through some major employee shifts, and I had 5 different presidents in 5 years. And every other company went through their own thing too. It wasn't just us; it was just the timing of the whole world affected everything. And I realized through having 5 different presidents, after having one for 15 years, that they were not respecting or honoring the process that a songwriter goes through to write songs. And in my last conversation with one of my bosses, I said to him, I said, there's no music business industry, anything, without songwriters. Kelly Clarkson would not have a career. Faith Hill would not have had a career. Barbara Streisand would not have had a career. I can go on and on and on without song. Yeah. Even Dave, Dave Grohl is a songwriter. So the Foo Fighters would have never happened if he had not been a great songwriter. But these songwriters have to write songs every single day of their life. And if they have to get up every day and do that, then they need to be inspired and nurtured and educated so that they can continue doing their job and doing it better every single day and changing with the times and all that. And when that was not respected at Warner Chappell anymore, I left. And hear this too, is that the music business and industry, in my opinion, really separated. Because the business is the internet. The business is the marketing and the promotion and the you can do anything in a minute now. All the royalties are transparent. Who sold out. If U2 sold out at the Staples Center, within 2 minutes I can tell you how many women, how many men, what ages groups sold out. The marketing and the statistics and what we have as far as how we can release music is amazing. But there's no room in that system for development. The industry is the rest of the world. And so that's why I left, because if you're going to be the next major songwriter, Mike, then you need to have resources to help you get there. And that's why I left, because my position has not changed. What I've done at Warner Chappell is what I do now. I just don't have a stable of songwriters that are signed to me. And I've formalized what the language was that I was speaking at Warner Chappell. No one ever asked me to write it down. I just did my job. When I left Warner Chappell, I had to actually go, oh, now what do I do? How do I, how am I going to tell everybody else what I do? So I actually, I wrote a book and I put retreats on, and I developed a methodology in this language so that I could take everything that I'd been doing at Warner Chappell with all these great artists and songwriters and make it accessible to anyone that wants to be a songwriter, because everybody is a songwriter. Everybody writes stories, and if you hum a few bars, you've just written a song.
But I feel like that allowed your reach to grow. So no longer was it just like a little bit within the of what you were given, but now you were opened up to the world to essentially find people and empower songwriters that needed that boost, that were hungry to find that guidance, that were like, here, help me, take my money, tell me what I need to get better at. And that has impacted so many people. And, it's so interesting to hear how you're from where you started to where you are now, that it was number one, curiosity. And it was always the thing that you just wanted to do. Like, it wasn't like, oh, maybe I'll, I'd like to be in NASA for a little bit. I'd like to do, it was just like, no, it's just like music. How the hell do I get there? Okay, that. And then you followed that, which led you here. I love too, that's a winding story. I always find the interesting stories are always ones, because nothing is a straight and narrow path. Like it's a boring story too. If it's just like, what happened? Well, I got there and everything ended up fine.
Nope. As I say, I had no idea what I was going to do. And look at me now, And what I'm really proud of is that, my company is 10 years old, and actually it's more than that. It's 11 years old. Oh my God, it's 11 years old. But that I was listening to my playlist that I have on Spotify, and I got to a section of songs, and it's like 5, 6 of my writers that I've, I've
Yeah.
mentored and consulted, have been to my retreat that have songs on that are doing well. I mean, that are like hit songs. Lauren Weintraub has a song on country radio right now called "She's Mine" that's brilliant, and Nell Maynard just has a brand new song with a new country guy too that she just wrote, and Jasmine Valdez has an amazing song called "I Just Miss Being in Love." Oh my God, I listen to this song every single day. So there's all these. It's just one. Milo's got like 3 or 4 songs on Spotify that are just doing well. So it's it's funny, but it's just like these are the songs I'm listening to that I'm loving, and I'm like so happy for them. Yeah.
I love this. And I love what you're all about, because the first time I met you in person, it was just like almost what you said about when that you didn't really need that second day. It's right in that first day of just like, ooh, I can totally vibe with what this person is like sending out right now. Cause you didn't realize you need it, but then suddenly it's just like, this is speaking to a whole other area of your craft that was missing, or it's just like you were looking for those next couple pieces to get in line. And I feel like you do that for so many songwriters.
That's what I love to do.
And Judy, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
You're welcome.
You know, listening back to this conversation with Judy, it's just, I'm reminded of that time when I was in a creative rut right before I took her retreat. I was kind of in that place where it's like, ugh. And guess what? We're always going to feel that. There are moments those creative ruts are going to come and go. But there are absolutely things that we can do. I like to think of mentors as being guardrails. Think of when you're driving. A guardrail is never at the edge of the cliff. It's right next to the road. It's very close to the road. So if you hit it, it's just saying, hey, don't go past this, because you may go wildly off track over the edge. So if you do not have a mentor, if you do not have someone right now that is helping you kind of just keep some things in line, keep things in perspective, to keep you on track, if you don't have that, those ruts get out of control and can last longer than they need to. So remember, if you're looking for guidance, if you're looking for mentorship, all you got to do, go to songwritingforguitar.com, click work with me, set up a one-on-one. I would love to help you get unstuck, get you back on track, get you in line with something like a 3-month, 6-month goal, so that we know what you need to be working on, so that you can have that focus, you can have that energy, that drive, that passion. So remember, songwritingforguitar.com, and then just click the work with me and you can book a mentoring session. All right, friends, that does it for this week's episode. It was edited and produced by Chris Fafalius. I'm Mike Myers. Thanks for listening.